Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Pure. That is Tim.
That's right. I can't argue with you.
You can't. No, it's that's a fact. So, this is a horror movie podcast. We talk about horror films every week on this show. We watch a movie, we discuss it together. We also look at some horror movie news as well. So, you know, that's basically it. The movie this episode, we are going to be talking about Nightmare Cinema and a horror anthology film, which is now debuted on Shudder and has 5 short films in it. It's actually a longer movie than I was expecting. It's a 2-hour movie. All the stories are about 20 minutes, give or take. So we'll get into that and we'll talk about it. Typically we start spoiler free, although I think with anthologies we kind of struggle to really do that. So we'll maybe give you a very brief kind of overview of how we feel about it and then go into each story one by one in the film. Tim, had you heard much about Nightmare Cinema? Were you looking forward to it before we got to it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, this was a big one on my radar. I really like Mick, Garris, who was the one who kind of put this all together. I listened to. I mean, obviously, he's known for such films as Critters 2 and Sleepwalkers and Psycho 4.
Notably, he wrote a lot of these movies. He didn't direct all of them, though, right? Because his directing credits aren't as prolific.
Yes, yeah. I don't think he has directed as much, but he's he's a writer director, and he works with Stephen King a lot, and he has a very good podcast called Postmortem, which I listen to every week. So obviously he's been making the podcast circuit a lot lately. So I've been hearing him on multiple different horror podcasts I listen to, so I was well aware of this, it's I can go a little bit into like kind of how this came about if you like, but because it's kind of interesting. Were you a Masters of Horror guy? I don't know if,
as in,
did
I watch that show where they had a director do each episode? I never actually did. It's one of those things where it never aired here, and I like there was like several times in my teens where I almost bought the box set. Like I almost did, because they did this weird thing where they released like the first 2 as a double pack. Like it was like a double feature. Like, you get the first 2 episodes, and everyone was like, "This is shit. Why don't you just put a season out?" And then they said, "Okay, everyone hated that, so we'll put out a season," which then pissed off everyone who bought the first double pack, because now they owned the first 2, and there was no future double packs coming out. Anyway, so I never did. I never watched that.
So you've never seen any of them?
No.
Oh, Pete, there's a really good John Carpenter one called Cigarette Burns.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we should probably just do it for the show, because they are basically like movies. Like it aired on Showtime, but they're like hour-long movies. But there were I actually think there are some really good ones. There's also a lot of ones that are kind of duds. But so basically though, Mick Garris, he's a big horror guy, very active in the horror community, and he used to have these dinners that he called like the Masters of Horror, where he would just invite other horror writers and filmmakers, and they would just kind of have these dinners where they hang out and everything, and that's what gave him the idea to do a TV show about it, where it's like, well, why don't we get all our horror friends together and we'll kind of make like one-off movies and whatnot, and so obviously that had, I think it was like maybe like 2-ish seasons, and then it ended up getting canceled, and he was always kind of looking to try to bring it back, and it just never happened. So then he kind of got this idea of doing Nightmare Cinema, which was a continuation of that, and I think he originally envisioned it as a TV show, but he specifically said that he wanted to focus on like foreign filmmakers and kind of bring like attention with these like great foreign horror directors, by kind of bringing them together and doing this anthology kind of series, and eventually that ended up becoming Nightmare Cinema essentially. So it was something I've been looking forward to for a while. I know they had like a week where it's like in theaters I really wanted to go see, and it was like right when my trip was starting, and it is even to the point where like we left, and so, like we had a day in Seattle before we departed on our cruise, and I was like, really trying to figure out. It's like, all right, I know we have a lot to do. We're only in Seattle for one day, so we do want to experience some stuff, and we have to get up early to get on this ship. I'm like, can I make it work and like go all the way across town to see this in theaters? And then unfortunately it didn't end up happening, but so I was a little bummed about not getting to see it in theaters, but I was happy, it's on VOD and everything now. I was happy we were finally able to get it. And I gotta say, I was pretty happy with it. I do love an anthology film. I do think there are definitely problems with it. I would say my three big issues is I do think it's way too long. I think it easily could have been cut up like 2 hours. I think it's too much for this movie.
Here's the beautiful thing about an anthology movie, Tim, though, is you can naturally actually split your viewing in half and not have it feel weird, because you can just split it up between stories, which is what I did. I watched it in two chunks.
I mean, we're recording a couple episodes today. I had to do some serious crunch time to fit everything in. But yeah, that probably would have been better. So that was my first complaint. My second complaint would be most of the stories, there were some stories that I loved. There were some that I liked, which, that's kind of the nature, of anthology movies. But I gotta say, that last story, I kind of hated. I did not care about it at all. So that, and it especially sucks that it's like, all right, so this is like the last one that you're going out on, and it's kind of a dud. It's
also the Mick Garris one as well, to point that out.
It sucks because I really do genuinely love Mick Garris. Like, I love hearing him talk. He's had a very long and storied career, but a lot of stuff he does, I'm just like, this is not that good. So that was unfortunate. And I do like well, I mean, we'll get into it in spoilers. Like, I was a little confused by the wraparound segment. I think I think I understand what they're trying to do, and I think there's some good ideas, but I don't think it really comes together.
I think I understand. I think by the time I got the ending made it all click for me, where I understood what was going on with the wraparound stuff.
I have questions on it, but I'll wait till spoilers because I don't want to spoil anything. But I think, and then actually, one more tiny complaint is I do think it was a low budget, which, hey, I totally understand. Like, you work with what you got, but there were definitely parts of it that felt a little cheap. But I mean, maybe that sounds too complaining right off the start, but I did genuinely really like this movie, even with those complaints aside.
Curious as to my thoughts, Timmy.
Not really. We can just I think people are more interested in what I have to say. No, of course I want to hear what you think. You're either going to disappoint me or you're going to surprise me. So.
Whoa! It's either disappointment or surprise. You can't expect that I'm going to give you a happy feeling. It's either no disappointing, which is expected, or a surprise.
Yeah,
I don't even know where to start. This relationship is buckling, Tim. It's buckling. Anyway, do you know, it's funny because I'm a bit more hit and miss in anthologies than you tend to be. So sometimes I feel they lack any type of consistency. What's really funny about this one is I actually did like this one for the most part quite a bit. I was a little unclear as to what the tone was supposed to be early on, but once I kind of settled into the kind of the pulpy, almost over the top tone that I had going for it, I actually thought this was, and it was funny is that I got to the third story and I liked the first two, and the third one it started off and I thought this might be the first one that I don't like. However, and we'll obviously get to it in spoilers, where the third one actually ends up going, it kind of flipped it around and turned it into kind of a glorious thing.
I think I'm on the same page with you, because that one started off as just like kind of a boring, like, all right, this is what we're doing, I don't really care about this kind of thing. But then by the end, it's almost like there's two different things going on with that third one, and one I don't really care about, but then another I absolutely loved.
it just takes a bit of time to get going, but once that third one gets going, there's one sentence I could say right now to sum up why that third one's worth watching, but I can't without spoilers. So, and then the fourth one's kind of the more artsy one, and I actually, and again, like I started off not sure if I was feeling it, but by the time I kept going, and it's in black and white, that one, I was like, oh, I actually really like the imagery and kind of the weird surreal feeling it's got. So by the time I was getting to the end of the fourth one, I thought, you know what, this is actually one of the most consistently good anthology movies I've seen probably ever. And then that fifth one hit.
Dude, it's so bad. I'm sorry. Like, or I mean, maybe I shouldn't be too rough. Like, it's just so like pointless. Like, it's just like, you know, it's not unique, it's not new, it's not interesting. Which I guess is like pretty insulting, but it just feels like at least everything before it was like felt very interesting or unique, or is doing a take on something that you hadn't seen before, and this is just so cookie cutter. It's like, what's the point? Like, especially like it, you know. It's kind of weird because I feel like anthology movies, like the last one is never really a good one. I don't know if like they think people get checked out by the end or something, but I don't know. People should really start like having like a really good one for the end. I feel
the point of the last story is mostly to explain the wraparound. So
I guess
I'll get to that when we get spoilers. But overall, actually, I'm quite happy with the movie. But I would have happily just cut that last story and just had it be like 25 minutes shorter.
Yeah. No, I 100% same. Yeah.
Yeah. Because. Because you got Mickey Rourke as the projectionist in the theater. I did feel like he was a little bit just kind of tacked on. Like I didn't really feel like he was that important to what was going on. Or
yeah, so I mean, what's weird with the wraparound is like he's not even like introduced right away, and then so it's kind of weird. Like, you know, he by the time he comes in like to the second or third story that's starting, you're kind of like, oh wait, who the hell is this guy all of a sudden? And then I love these anthology movies, and I love the idea of having like a wraparound, and especially with like some type of horror host, you know, like a, you know, crypt keeper kind of thing. And the idea of the projectionist does sound like, oh, a cool host, you know, for these movies, but he just looks like Mickey Rourke.
He does.
And like it's not like a cool costume or makeup or anything. It's just like, hey, I'm just Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, he's not really. He's not really playing a character. He's just kind of there. And like you say, he's not introduced until maybe the end of the second story, start of the third one. So it feels a little bit odd. Like, it's like, why isn't he introducing the movie at the start? Why hasn't he like got like a little monologue or something? I don't know.
Yeah, so, exactly.
So it's funny, as much as we're nitpicking these little things, like I think the movie overall we're really positive on, because I think 4 out of the 5 stories are just good, to some extent. You know, obviously varying degrees, but so you know, overall it's a positive opinion. I had fun. Yeah. You know, I had fun.
Oh, cool. You know, sometimes I don't know which way you're gonna go, because I can see you being a little more critical. I mean, we definitely have our criticisms on it, but I'm glad you enjoyed it though. That's nice to hear.
Yeah. So I think we'll just give the spoiler warning now, because we have to talk about each story on its own. So instead of doing 5 different spoiler-free sections with 5 different spoiler sections for each one, let's just give the spoiler warning so we can talk about each of the stories and get started with Nightmare Cinema. So
yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. So I highly recommend people go watch it and then come back and listen. So because especially like some of these, I think are very have like kind of surprise or twist endings, like especially like the first one. That one might be my favorite, but yeah, it's you don't want to get spoiled on it, so watch it first.
Yeah, the first one is The Thing in the Woods, and we have this girl who runs into the theater, which is a wraparound segment, and this is kind of a running thing, is that we always see one of the main characters from the story will go into the theater and then watch their own story play out in the theater. And the first story is essentially, it's like a slasher movie. There's this girl's running in the forest and she's covered in blood, and she runs into her boyfriend. They're being chased by the welder. It's this slasher killer's got a big welding mask on. And this kind of neatly splits into a few things. It sort of introduces them, and then there's a section where they run into a cop. And what I thought was interesting about the way the characters act in this one is the acting's not great. It's actually one of the things throughout the movie that's a little bit over the top is the acting, but it felt kind of intentional, like a pulpy way. Like they wanted to kind of like play up the tropes of whatever story they were kind of riffing on, because the characters, when they run to the cop, they imply all this history as if there was a whole movie that we've not seen the rest of, which I thought was interesting. The cop does do something really silly here that did make me laugh. So the killer shows up, and the cop sort of unloads his bullets at him. And he, the welder's wearing like shielding, and he's got the big mask on, so he actually is kind of bulletproof outside of his shoulders and hands. But the cop just keeps unloading into his chest, and it doesn't do anything. But the killer does go down eventually, and the idiot cop essentially kills himself by tripping on the killer's foot and accidentally shooting himself in the head. It's a really funny moment, which I did not see coming. Like, because I think we're all expecting the killer to grab him or something like that, or whatever. But the couple run to the house, the cabin that they were staying at. That one of their friends is still there, and there's the shotgun on the wall, which they make use of. And I saw your tweet about this, and yes, I did also think of Resident Evil, the original game.
Yeah. I was like, oh, well, surely they're going to have to find a broken shotgun first that they'll need to replace with that one. Again, there's another really silly moment here where the killer, when he shows up, at one point grabs the friend, or the main boyfriend dude, like picks up the shotgun and he fires it once, and I thought, okay, you fired it once and he's used your friend as a human shield, right? Okay, that's fine. He then unloads every shell he has into his friend who's been held up in front of him, to the point where he actually blows up his head. He gets a proper like crit headshot, and then once the killer throws the friend down, who's now just this bloody stump of a corpse. At this point, he has no shells left, and he just throws the shotgun away. And I'm like, maybe you should have saved some of those rounds for when the killer was going to not have your friend in front of him. Oh my god! Like everything is like playing on like really over the top slasher cliches, but it works so well. Like it's so funny, especially if you're familiar with these types of movies. It's obviously very campy and over the top, but it does it really well. And it doesn't feel like a kind of eye rolly, like stupid parody kind of way. It's like, oh no, this feels like someone that likes this genre, but just making like fun of it. And it's I was laughing a lot during this.
Well, as the thing, I think it took me a couple of minutes to get that that's what it was supposed to be. Like, because the first scene when they're in the woods, I was like, this feels kind of off. It feels like the action's kind of off. Like, what's going on? But by the time the cop kills himself, and then we get to this stuff in the cabin, I started to understand what the sense of humor was going for, and it started to click a bit more for me. Because even the fact that the girl, like, she has her final girl moment where she picks up an axe and she gets like a chain wrapped around her arm. She's like, well, all right, you piece of shit, I'm going to fight back. And we have this fight scene between the girl and the killer until she's about to kill the killer, and the killer lifts up his mask, and it's like, and we've never seen him before, but it's her friend. It's like one of their friends who were out here, and it's like, okay, so we've revealed that he's the killer, whatever. But this is when the movie when the story gets a kind of a weird twist, where he then explains why he's killing everyone, and instead of it being like, oh, you all picked me when we were younger, or I'm psychotic or whatever, it turns into a story where there's an alien invasion of spiders which have been taking over people, invasion of the body snatcher style, and he's been killing all the people who have been taken over by aliens. He's actually the hero of the story. The welder is the hero. That's the twist.
I absolutely loved it. I mean, even if it just like without this little twist, on its own, it would be kind of like a funny send up of, slasher movies. But then just adding this extra layer of like, oh wow, and it just really like makes you kind of like rethink the whole thing. I absolutely loved it. Like I don't think I've ever seen anything like this necessarily done before. I thought it was really cool.
I was into the twist just for the silliness of it more than anything else. I thought that was pretty funny. Honestly, the only thing I like about the end of this story is that he kills her. When he gets out in the car in the morning, he's kind of dodging all these spiders because we kind of end him in the cabin at night with all these like alien spiders coming in, and he's just like on his own, just killing them left and right.
Yeah.
And he leaves the next day in the car, and we get the final little reveal before the end of the story as he's driving towards the city that he's been taken over. He's got an alien spider inside his head, and I actually don't like that part of it because it felt like we just had to have the little thing to say things are still dangerous, like things aren't okay.
Yeah.
And I kind of like the idea of him being a hero.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Via being a slasher killer, because I thought that was kind of an interesting little play on it. It's like, oh no, the slasher killer is the hero of the story.
Yeah.
So having him fail at the end felt like, no, it'd have been funnier if he actually succeeded and he was a hero and he saved the day.
And you still could have had like something like maybe he saves the day, but then like some cops come and just like look at like all these dead bodies and see him there or something. Like you could still do like a little bit of a downer ending or something, but still have him be a hero, which probably would have been nice, but yeah, it's fine. I really like this one. Like one of my favorite gags, kind of similar to the shotgun thing though, is when he stabs like the boyfriend character to the wall with these knives. So he has like this whole like little like like cutlery knife block thing, so the guy on the wall keeps grabbing knives and the killer just takes them out of his hands and just stabs him with them. And it's like a great setup because it happens like he first gets stabbed to the wall and then he goes to take another knife and then the welder stabs him with it. So it's like a nice little thing, and then he goes to reach another one and then he does it again, and then it kind of like clicks where you're like, oh wait a minute, there's like whatever 4 or 5 knives in that. He's not going to do like each one, is he? And then like sure enough they go through it. Like again, similar with the shotgun, it's like, oh, he's not going to keep shooting. It's like, no, they do go there. It's funny.
Well, what I like though is by the time he gets to the last 2 knives, he can't actually reach anymore. He's too weak from all the stabbing, so the killer just takes them himself and starts stabbing them until he's like stabbed all his arms and hands up against the wall. Really good. It's not even the only scene in this movie where there's a character with like multiple knives sticking out of them. We get to another one of those later. No, I had a blast with this one. It has the right sense of humor. Once I understood what the sense of humor was supposed to be and what it was going for, it kind of clicked, and I was into the kind of absurdity and just making fun of all the slasher tropes. It felt a little bit like I was feeling a little bit of Final Girls in there at points with the humor, that kind of thing. So yeah. The Thing in the Woods is a pretty solid start, but it kind of sets the tone of like, okay, we're going to be over the top, we're going to be silly, it's not a super serious horror movie. We're going to just have fun with it. So
do you have I forget if you mentioned when you introduced it, but do you have who the director was for this one?
The director is Alejandro Brugués. I'm going to guess his name's pronounced. Apologies if I butchered that last one. Are you familiar with this director from other things?
Is he the one that did One of the Dead?
He is indeed. Which I've never seen. Is this something we should do at some point, Tim? Is this a...
I actually haven't seen it either. I just heard him talking about it. It sounded interesting, though. I would definitely be down to check it out.
Honestly, that was in 2010, and the only things that he's really done in between... 2011 that was. The only thing that he's done in between is a segment on ABCs of Death 2, which those ABCs of Death movies are like I saw a little bit of the first one, but I swear those movies are like on every streaming service I've ever had, because they're always throwing them at me. It's weird. And he did a couple of episodes of the From Dusk Till Dawn series, which is on Netflix. Well, it's El Rey, but I think Netflix have got it everywhere else.
I'd be interested in checking that out now. Especially after seeing this. Maybe people can tell us, tweet at us or send us an email or something if they think if anyone's seen it and think it's worth doing.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the first story. Pretty solid. The girl who was in the theater is just not there when we come back. So from this one, so that was the first one. Second one was Mireille, I'm going to say that's pronounced. This was actually the Joe Dante one, and I like Joe Dante. I'm a big Joe Dante fan, and I actually got really sad when I realized this was the Joe Dante story, because because Joe Dante, like Dick Miller was in every film that Joe Dante had ever made until recently, and of course Dick Miller passed away. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a super sad death. He made it to his 90s. He had a great run. But you know, he was in Explorers, he was in Small Soldiers, he was in the two Gremlins movies. You know, he was Howling. You know, he's in all the Joe Dante movies up until a point. So you know, it's kind of sad that he wasn't here to be in this. But so
he could have like easily been like the doctor or something, or
sure, yeah. He should be the janitor reprising his role from Chopping Mall.
Oh sure.
That wasn't a Joe Dante movie, but he's in that too. He's also he's also in the Terminator, of course. He's the guy that sells Arnold his guns in the first Terminator. You know, he's like plasma rifle. He's like, only what you see, pal. You know, that's that scene. So this is a story about a fiancé couple, and the girl we see. You know, they're kissing outside of the theater, and the wrap around. They come in the theater, and then of course they stop kissing when they see that they're on screen. Okay, we're on film now, and we start the actual story with her. She's got like scarring on the side of her face, and she comes out to see him from the bathroom. And they're at a restaurant. They've been having lunch or dinner or whatever, and he gives it. I actually laughed out loud in this scene because he gives her this speech about how you've been looking at the mirror again. Like, this does not matter. You're beautiful, and like, you know, like physical attractiveness is overrated, and you make me feel so happy. You never have to worry about this ever again. Like, don't worry about your scarring. And then he immediately says, I was talking to my mum about plastic surgery if you're up for it. I laughed out loud when he just, because he makes this big speech about how it doesn't matter, which by the way, like this girl is still gorgeous. This is like Hollywood. Like, we'll put a little scar on her and like, she thinks she's hideous, but she's clearly still like a supermodel. But like, he just immediately brings up plastic surgery. He's like, I'll pay for it. I'll do it. I'll pay for it. And you can, you know, be as confident as you want. And I'm like, this grimy sleazeball. I mean, I was laughing because it was just so absurd the way he just shifted straight to it, but it made me laugh. Made me laugh a lot. And he brings up that his mother's had a lot of work done, so we kind of get his mother teased throughout the story. But she goes to this plastic surgery place, and the doctor's this really friendly guy. He's like, "Oh, we'll do this, and you know, we'll get rid of 95% of the scarring." He's overly cheery. And he's like, "Hey, while you're under, we could do some other things as well if you want. We could, you know, take in the nose a bit here, and we could plump these cheekbones up a little touch, and just, you know." I was like, and she's kind of like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "That's vain." He's like, "Of course not. Of course he's going to say he's getting paid to do it. I mean, he wants to do as much work as possible." I also liked how casually in this scene, like, his assistant just came up and like took her top down just so they could look at her boobs to decide if there needs to be some boob work done. But yeah, so she goes under the knife. We get like a brief scene of her POV, and she's going under as they're operating, and she wakes up and she's got bandages wrapped around her head.
There's like a cool, like, quick little like dream sequence and stuff too. Like
oh yeah, you're right. Yeah,
she's like going to the altar, and then like she sees her husband up there, and then all of a sudden it changes to like just the doctor is like all bloodied and smiling creepily
with a big bone saw in his hand. Yeah, no, that was cool. And what I liked about this partly is that it reminded me a lot of a Twilight Zone episode, actually.
Oh, without a doubt.
There's some Twilight Zone episode vibes in this one. But she's not allowed to look at herself. She's got bandages on her face. She's told not to talk. The husband, or the husband to be rather, comes in and like sees her and says, "Oh, everything went well, you know, so excited, blah blah blah." And he goes out and he's having a serious talk. He takes some photos of her and presumably sends it to his mother, and then goes and talks to the doctor. And she kind of wakes up and sees them kind of like, you know, discussing something intensely, and then pretends to be asleep. And she's told repeatedly, okay, so there's a small problem. You're not breathing as well as you should be. That's a common thing that happens with when nose work is done. So we'll put you under tomorrow and fix it all up, and we'll have you out here in no time. And you get the impression it's like, okay, that's not really why they want to put her under again. Something else is going on. So she actually sneaks out of her bed and goes snooping around the hospital and sees on the computer there's a note on her file saying fiance requests more work to be done immediately. Like he's trying to whip her up to shape for whatever vision he has for her is. And she ends up like going around. She finds like a presumably they've been taking like body parts from this woman. She finds like in this room where it's like all of her skin is just like kind of, and her features are just kind of been gone from her face. It's kind of grotesque. She ends up having like a proper like fight with one of the nurses where she like stabs her and everything. Like she's probably fending her off, but she ends up getting nabbed by the doctor.
I was like bummed too, like because I thought she was gonna make it, or at least have a little bit more time of freedom. But it seems like she gets captured kind of quick.
I actually really like the fight with the nurse because she gets like half of her bandages kind of pulled off at one point, and it felt very visceral to me.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. And then I like that, like, when she's like still, trying to run away after that, and like, you still see like the bandages hanging off and stuff, and yeah, it definitely looks cool.
I think what works about this story mostly is just the feeling that it has, where it feels like she's helpless because she's been forced into this, and that like I think the obvious like symbolism here is the idea of like just her beauty been taken away from her in the sense where it's like something that she's been told is not important, but the guy in the relationship is like no, this is the most important thing, and I'm going to shape it and mold it. You're not you anymore. You're my image of you is kind of what we're doing.
Yeah, definitely.
So
yeah, it's definitely like societal themes and stuff you can take away from that, and yeah, people like judging you and that, and like not being able to escape these criticisms.
Yeah, because if it's not literal plastic surgery, it's the idea of feeling pressure into working out more than you probably should because you feel like you need to be this skinny, or you need to do this, you need to do that. So really neat. And then she wakes up again, and she's still freaking out, and the boyfriend's like, oh, my mum's came to see you, my mum's here, are you excited to meet her? And she pulls off her bandages, and we see she looks grotesque. She looks like a monster. She's got like her nose is missing, it's all deformed, and it's like, well, this is what you wanted. And then his mum walks in, and this is kind of the ending of the story. We see her, and she looks like the most like disturbing like plastic person ever, and it's not a super original idea, but it's just it's executed so well. I think this story.
Definitely. Yeah, like I think after a while, like I started to kind of connect the dots and figure like out like, okay, so it seems like he's trying to make her look like his mother, and then you kind of get the idea. All right, then she's gonna look really weird, and of course that's what it ends up being. And she has 3 breasts, of course. Not
the mother. The main character has 3 breasts. When she takes off the bandages and she looks down at herself, she's got 3 breasts. Yes. So clearly this dude's a Total Recall fan. That is the one thing we've established by the end of the story.
And so I guess like I did like this one as well. It's like you said, it's the way they present it. Like I like this idea of this paranoia where everyone's telling you like, oh, this is fine, this is simple, this is fine, don't worry about it, it's just a little thing, whatever. But like just the idea that she knows this is wrong and she needs to get out of here, and it feels like very frantic. And I liked it. And then I guess my question would be though, like, wait, did the mother always look like that, or is this like a weird thing that this family has, that they just like always need their brides to like look this way? And then
I think it's the latter. I don't think she always. I think she got all this work done because she needed the work to be done. I don't know. I have no idea. The logic behind their choices is something I can't really get into very slowly. The logic maybe is a little hard to suss out, but I mean it works on a a horror level and everything. But I do like as soon as she's like in the chair being told what work should be done, it feels like he's already manipulating her. Like she's already having the choice taken away from her. Like even though she still theoretically has the chance to leave, it feels like the choice is already gone. So I like that.
Yeah, and it feels like like a little like gaslighty, like just even in the beginning, like the way he's like, oh no, like you're saying, like, oh you're beautiful, you're perfect. But I mean, if you want to, there's this place. My mother really recommends it. We can do it for free. It is very like, oh, okay.
Well, to be fair, it wasn't free. It was I'll pay for it all. Like that's how much he cares.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like you're beautiful to me already, but I will pay for all of your plastic surgery should you be willing to do it. Convincing, very convincing. So, and I think it's after these two where the projectionist kind of appears behind them, I want to say.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Not really much happens with him, to be honest, but yeah, he appears. The third story is Mashit, or Mashit, and this is directed by Ryuhei Kitamura, if I'm pronouncing that right, Japanese director, who I'm actually familiar with. I have seen his film Versus, which was a zombie movie.
Oh, yes.
Set in the woods, which I wasn't a super big fan of, but I actually really liked his movie after that he did called Sky High, which wasn't a horror movie. That was an action movie, but not to be confused with a Disney movie about superheroes. It's not that. It's a Japanese movie. But I actually really liked that movie. In fact, I think I still own it in DVD, if I recall. But he also went on to do Midnight Meat Train when he went to the West, which was not a movie I'm particularly fond of or like.
I wasn't crazy about it. I do kind of want to go back and watch it again, because I have heard people say like, oh no, this is like a nice little gem from the last couple of years that people overlooked. I'm like, maybe I should give it a second shot. But I remember watching it and just kind of being like, all right, fine, whatever. I like the Clive Barker story it's based on.
Sure. But maybe we'll do it in the show at some point. But yeah, so this story, at the start of this, I wasn't feeling it. It was this because the character goes in as a priest. As a priest goes into the theater, and the story when it starts is kind of, okay, this kid's possessed and jumps off the church, and we have a few different characters here. We have like the sort of what I'll refer to as the main nun that we kind of deal with. There's also the mother of one of the daughters who's kind of works at the church. It's a Catholic school, and so we have these things going on, and there's like I wasn't feeling that there's a demon or whatever, and there's a scene where the priest is having sex with a nun like in his office, and it's just there, because there was one line actually where once the dead kid comes back in sort of ghostly possessed form, he says, I miss what we used to do in here. And I don't know if he was implying that he also abused the kids.
I wasn't sure about that either.
But at the same time, though, the rest of the story doesn't really feel like it goes in that direction, so I don't think it was.
Well, I hope not, because at one point you do kind of start rooting for the priest.
You do, yeah.
So
I think
I hope
the movie wants you to root for the priest at a certain point, even though he's a bit of a scumbag. And I think so I hope that's not what it was implying, but
yeah.
So in all of this, there's like crosses falling off the wall and whatever, and then eventually like the little girl's being made fun of because her mum works there, and like I wasn't feeling like this demonic figure standing behind her kind of thing. However, when the little girl pushes her away or whatever, and the girl does this like flip, this ridiculous flip, I was like, okay, that was kind of funny, and I was kind of feeling it a little bit more.
Yeah, the first half of it just feels like very generic, like, all right, this is just like your basic possession thing. Like it's kind of it's not really doing much for you.
Yeah, and because it's got the kids all sitting up in bed at the same time and things like that. It's all right. However, this story goes to a place in the back half where we have a priest and a nun with swords killing dozens of possessed children, and we're talking slitting throats, decapitating. Like
there's literally just like body parts flying in the air. It becomes such a wild ride. Like I was genuinely like surprised. Because I really was just like, all right, so here's where we get our lull. All right, this is not horrible, but it's just, all right, what's the point? It's not that interesting of a story, but it ends up going to like a wild place where it's like I could just watch this priest just like cut off little kids' heads for hours. It's so great. His
head's like in slow motion, like flying through the air. He's just stabbing them left and right. Meanwhile, the nuns try to talk to because it turns out it's the mother that's possessed. It's not the kid. The mother's the one who's possessed, and she's trying to talk to her, and she ends up like surviving. They go off the roof, but she kind of survives by like having the possessed women go down first. Like I'm like, that still wouldn't save you. Like the fall would still kill.
Yeah.
Still, I mean, it would at the very least injure you dearly. She just gets up as if nothing happens.
Sure.
The priest does get killed. Eventually, the kids overpower him and stab him like multiple times, so he does die. But yeah, so I mean, ultimately, that's all you want to talk about with this story is just how insane and great the scene of them, because it comes to a point where they're trapped in kind of the chapel area, and the kids are like breaking down the door, and the priest like gets like a sword and hands her a couple of daggers or whatever, and she's like, "What do we do with this?" And he's like, "Survive."
Yeah, it's like it's so much fun. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have like much else to add, but yeah, it is just like a really good time. Actually, I really like the music in this one too. It's kind of like this. It's almost kind of like a rock music. Actually, reminds me of something you would have heard in like a later like Castlevania game or something. But I mean, it fits really well with like the kind of like I guess almost like video gamey like just like hack and slash kind of action that's going on.
Yeah. And I remember elements of this in these other films, actually, these Japanese films, but I always enjoy when a movie says, screw it, no, we can kill kids in this movie, it's okay.
Yeah.
And obviously they're all possessed kids, it's not like he's just murdering children, but...
Right, yeah. And it's supposed to be, like, over-the-top, like, parody stuff, like, it's not, like, it's not, like, disturbing and realistic or anything.
Yeah, so... And notably, this is the third person who's come into this theater. Well, technically fourth, because it was a couple the last time, who died in the story. I think that's very important for where we're going at the end of this. And the fourth story is called "This Way to Egress," or "Egress." I'm not actually. Are you familiar with this word, Tim?
Yeah, it basically means like an outing that like leads outside. So,
okay, all right. So is that right? Egress? Like, is that the...
From what I've it's not a word I use often, but I'm pretty sure egress is how you say it.
Okay. So this is the David Slade directed one. It's black and white. The actress is notably the actress who was in Ouija 2, but also the Haunting of Hill House. She was one of the main characters in that. So becoming something of a scream queen in a way. But this is stories in black and white. She's at the doctor's office. She's waiting with her two children, her two boys, and she's waiting to get in. And the receptionist just keeps telling her to wait. Be a few more minutes. And they've been there for a long time. The kids are complaining. They're hungry. They're kind of talking back to her a little bit. She's ready to throw in the towel and just sort of leave, but then it's like, no, the doctor's ready now and he's waiting for you. And she goes in and he asks just a lot of questions about how she's feeling, and basically over the course of her waiting to get in here, every time she goes up to the receptionist is looking a little bit more off. Like she starts to look a bit demonic almost. And when she goes into the door, she's like, oh yeah, things are starting to change. Like I'm seeing people look disturbed, like they're turning into demons or something like that. And the world as well, like the world's looking a little bit disturbed, and he's just very weird with the way he responds to her. He keeps asking questions. Doesn't ever sound very helpful. He eventually says, oh, I've got a meeting to go to, and this is right after he's asked if she's suicidal, and she never actually answers the question. He just kind of says, yeah, well, we'll continue this tomorrow, come back at 8:30, and we'll talk about it. But the actual main part of the story is that when she comes back out of the doctor's office, her kids are missing. So a lot of the story is her looking through the building for her kids, which is mostly empty now. But everyone she sees, all the janitors that she sees, the employees who are leaving for the night, all of them now look very unhuman. They all have this kind of... that's also kind of reminded me of a Twilight Zone episode, actually, funnily enough. But
I actually got like a lot of kind of Silent Hill vibes off of this.
Oh, from the other world kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, I guess maybe just like, and like the way it kind of looked and sounded and stuff, but yeah, like very disturbing. And it's like everyone, it is kind of hard to put it because it's like they're still humanoid, but it's just like features are kind of exaggerated and extended, and all the voices are distorted. And like I think she mentioned something with the therapist, like he says, oh, like do things keep changing for you? Do things keep looking different? And I'm trying to think, like I want to say this might be like a real condition that like some people have, where just like things never look the same, or like things like obviously this is probably a very exaggerated example of it, but I do think there is like something that can happen to people where it's like like someone just always looks different, or maybe you just get the feeling that they look different, that they don't look the same, which I mean, that in of itself just sounds like a horrifying, a way to live. But then kind of add this horror element too, where everything looks so like bleak and disturbing. It's like really hard.
Yeah, and she does eventually like have a gun in her purse, so she pulls out a gun. Yeah. And the implication in this story is definitely she did eventually kill herself. So that's definitely what we get from it by the end. She ends up having this fight with someone in the bathroom when she's still looking for her kids, and she pulls out this gun, which is a very strange looking gun. It's got a very unique look to it. In fact, at one point it looked like it was, like a toothpaste tube when you're sort of like squeezing it out, but if you sort of like unsqueeze it, it'll sort of suck back in a little bit. At one point it looked like there was like a stuff coming out of the barrel that looked kind of like that. To me, it was like sort of... Oh
yeah, definitely.
Just sort of squeeze it out.
Like it almost looks organic in a way, like it could be its own little creature.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, ultimately she ends up back up outside the doctor's office, and she hears her two kids talking to the doctor, and it almost makes it sound like her two kids are conspiring and like with the doctor to try and make her crazy. I'll be honest, a lot of the dialogue here was actually really hard to hear for me. There's a lot of sound effects on it, so you get out the odd sentence of what they're saying behind the door, but a lot of it was really distorted. I feel like there's probably a lot of little interesting tidbits if you whack on the subtitles, or assuming it doesn't just say inaudible or something like that, which it might.
Yeah, so what I kind of took away from this, and again, maybe I don't know if I misheard stuff or understood it correctly, but at one point did they say that she like kind of fell into this other like level of consciousness or something? Like I kind of got the impression that they're in like almost this other kind of plane of reality that normal people can't access, but every now and again, possibly maybe from like some traumatic experience or something, like people ascend to this plane accidentally, and then it's kind of up to people to like, I guess, kind of get them out.
Yeah, they mention that she mentions that her husband left her a few days ago, and so you're thinking that she is came into this world. That was like one thing that I thought that I heard them kind of mention or talk around. But I mean, I'm not sure. I guess it could probably be like open to interpretation. And even if they do specifically say that, you could also make the argument that maybe they're saying that to, or maybe she's imagining them saying that, or maybe they're just saying that to trick her into killing herself, because she, feels like she's stuck in this place that she can't get out of. But yeah,
I don't know.
It definitely says that their goal is for her to commit suicide, and it's, maybe it's because she's sort of stumbled into another world here, because obviously, like at certain points, people react as if there was no kids. Whose kids are you talking about? Because it was the same with the doctor. Even when the doctor was asking questions and she was referring to her kids, it didn't seem like he was, it looked like he was kind of like asking more questions because he knows she doesn't have kids or something to that effect.
And even at one point, don't the kids, like, or I think maybe when they're talking to the doctor, don't they say something like, yeah, she still thinks that we're her kids or something like that?
Yeah. So, no, it's interesting.
I guess a lot of it...
I have to imagine that the husband took the kids with him, and that's why the kids are this important, like, image in her head. Like, that's why she's just seeing what she thinks are her kids.
I guess like the big question though, is this like literally what's going on, or is this part of her symptoms, or like is it just going on in the head? I guess it could be like open to interpretation, but I
think it's open, and I think ultimately, like, it's obviously a harder one to get your head around exactly as to what's going on. I think why this one works for me and why I like it is just how it feels, more than anything else. Doubt, which is kind of similar to the second story, I suppose, in a way, but it's just the feeling of surrealness as she's going through all these hallways and checking all these different locations for her kids, and seeing more people who look very kind of deformed, but all deformed in the exact same way. It's almost like they're a different species, where they all have the same look to them. So
yeah, like she's like the odd one out, and then this one I like this one a lot. It's definitely it's probably the most depressing of it. Like, it is very bleak and desolate and isolated, and and the style and the imagery really matches it well. Like what they're going for with the story.
Can you hear that?
I can, yeah.
Clint Howard's not happy with the review of Ice Cream Man. He's coming for me. He's coming. No, I liked this one quite a bit because it was very stylized and it had a really good surreal tone. And I think what I liked about these 4 stories is that not only did they all have some fun or something to be had in terms of either just insanity or mood or whatever, they're all different as well, which I think is really nice. Yeah. None of them feel like they're repeating what the other ones did, which is really good.
Definitely.
So the final story, which notably the character who's this teenager who's the main character in it, he comes into the theater and notices a piano at the side of the stage and goes and starts playing it. And this leads into his story where he's at a piano recital. His parents come to see him. There's a weird thing where the dad's late and the mum kind of gives him shit for it, but it's never actually a plot point that matters later. It doesn't really come up or is important. Mm-hmm. But when they go back out in the car and they're praising him for such a good job, there is a crazy man in the back seat who pulls out a gun and kind of holds him a little bit hostage. And when they try and fight back, the dad gets shot in the head, the mum gets shot multiple times. And the son does actually get shot himself as well, but he survives. We cut to a hospital. He's getting operated on, and he sees his mother basically for a brief moment when he's kind of delirious. It's very clear, of course, that she's dead. And I thought it was weird how in this story the doctors and nurses never wanted, like, every time he brings up his parents and like is his mum alive, they're always like, "Oh, we won't talk about that now, honey." And I'm like, he has to find that out pretty soon. Like, that's a pretty big deal to get to. So the plot of this is basically that because he was technically dead for 17 minutes and came back, that he can now see dead people walking around. And he meets this other girl who's there who tried to commit suicide, and she also can see dead people walking around. And so there's a plot where he keeps seeing his mother. His mother's essentially trying to convince him to die so that he'll come with her. But also the crazy man who killed his parents shows up at the hospital a couple of times to try to kill him because he saw his face and he wants to take out the witness. It sucked.
Oh man, even you like recounting it is like boring me. Like, everything about this I didn't like there's no like visually there's nothing interesting about it. Story wise,
actually, it's like, can I give you my worst moment of the whole movie? It's in this story.
Sure. Okay.
It's when eventually, because there's a bit of a cat and mouse with the killer when the killer's chasing him around once he properly gets in the hospital, try to kill him, and he eventually finds him. He hides in the morgue for a bit, but then he finds him in this big supply closet, and he's strangling him and he's like killing him. And as he's like potentially dying again, the kid in his head sees his mother. It's like a black screen, but there's like just an oval of light in the middle with the mother in it as a portrait talking to him, saying, "That's it, son. Come to me, baby." Mm-hmm. And then it changes to the girl that he met in the hospital who was actually killed by the ghost of his mother, apparently. Because she was trying to convince them that, oh, your mother's trying to wants you to die, so you shouldn't listen to her. And because of that, the ghost of the mother kills her. Because ghosts can do that, apparently. Which begs the question, why didn't she just kill her son? if it's that easy. But but as he's dying, he gets this weird, just like really cheesy vision of his dead mother in this oval in the middle of the screen, and then it changes to the friend in the hospital who's like, "No, don't listen to her, fight it, live." And then it cuts back to the mom. She's like, "No, don't listen to that slut, listen to your mom." Like, and it's just that was the worst scene of the whole movie for me. Was this like the two dead ghosts trying to? It's so cheesy and schmaltzy. The idea of like the ghosts fighting over him and trying to like save him, and I hated this one.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. It's it's like, it feels like it's trying to be weirdly heartwarming, which is like, why, when like all the other like things have been like pretty bleak and stuff, like why do this now? And then it even annoys me the way it starts, because like we've established like everything has been the same. It's like, someone comes in, they sit down, they watch a movie, but then all of a sudden the last one you're changing it up, this kid comes in and instead sees a piano and starts playing the piano. It's like, what? Like, I don't know, why are you changing it up at this point? And then it's just, I just don't care about anything that's happening in this. It's like, it's not interesting, it's not original. Even like in the movie, as like, oh, we're doing a hospital one again. Like we already had like a much better story in this movie that took place in a hospital.
Yeah, of course he does fight back and he stabs the killer in the chin with a broken broomstick. Okay, fine. Yeah. And this is the one that tells you kind of what's been going on here. Is essentially everyone who's came to this theater is here because they've already died and they're seeing how their final story played out before they move on to the afterlife or whatever. And the final wraparound segment is when we come back to him. The kid is here because he technically died, but he actually went back. He came back alive. So because of that, he doesn't stay. He's allowed to leave. But all the other dead characters from throughout the film are all still sitting in the theater. So the projectionist, because again, like the wraparound stuff is maybe some of the weakest outside of the last story, just in the sense that the final shot is like the projectionist putting away like the film canister of like his story, and it like goes next to the other 4 that we've had, and then the camera does this pullback, and we see it's just shelves and shelves and shelves of film reels. He's done this with hundreds of people, and I'm like, I assumed this. The final shot means nothing to me.
Yeah. Well, like, so I like the idea of, I think that's a cool idea for an anthology movie. People come in, they watch it, how they die, and then, the projectionist. All right, that's a cool name. I wish maybe he looked a little more interesting. I wish he didn't just look like Mickey Rourke just like got out of his car and went to film this. But that's fine, whatever. But then I'm confused because like, didn't he mention something about how he's like he wants their souls or anything? So I'm like, okay, so are you like a demon? Are you like, what exactly are you doing? Are you like in like heaven or hell, or I don't know. And then also, if these are supposed to be like how people died, then the woman in the second story, she doesn't die at the end. She gets the plastic surgery, but do we assume that she, I don't know, kills herself or her husband kills her, or?
That's a good point. I mean, they're both dead in the theater though, so presumably this does lead to her death.
I don't know, because it just, I don't know. It seems like they maybe like overcomplicated it. Like, I don't know. It seems like there was good ideas with. It's a good point.
It never occurred to me that they didn't actually die in that story, because at the end of the movie, when they're all sitting there with the others, they're just as dead. So it's like it's clearly saying they're dead now.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a bit weird. The fact is we're nitpicking some of this ending stuff and some of the wraparound in the final story, but the truth is for an anthology, this was a really good above average anthology, because 4 out of 5 stories were enjoyable. So yeah, I can't be too harsh on it. I mean, I don't think I could give it a rave review, but I was pleasantly surprised, especially when I saw it was 2 hours. I was dreading, like, oh my god, it's gonna be 2 hours of shit. Like, that's my concern when I see a long horror movie, when I see something that's over 90 minutes, because horror movies are designed to be short, right? Let's just be honest about that. So
I mean, it's like anything, if it's good, I'm okay with it going a little longer. But 90 minutes is the sweet spot.
Oh, sure. But I think what I mean is that typically I feel like the bad ones tend to be the ones that overstay their welcome. And don't know when to. The reason why most horror movies are that short is because they're tight, and horror movies shouldn't be a long experience for the most part. Obviously, there's exceptions, and there are good long horror movies. I mean, Midsummer came out this year and it was like 2.5 hours. Like, it happens.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like even the ones that that I liked, they probably could have been shorted a little bit. I am trying to think now, though. I wonder if since it's called Nightmare Cinema, I wonder, are these supposed to be like maybe people's nightmares or something instead of like how they died? I don't know. I'm just wondering if there's anything to that. I don't know. I guess I mean I guess the fact that we're questioning it probably tells you something about kind of the level of.
I never got the impression they were actual nightmares. I always got the impression that they were the deaths, just because of the way that the ending plays out. It just makes more sense to me that they're all dead, except the kid from the last story, because he died and came back, so he gets to leave.
Yeah. I guess it does make more sense.
Yeah,
but,
so that's what I've got for you.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you though. That's I mean, probably my biggest nitpicks is I'm sorry, I love you, Mick Garris, but I just did not like this last one or the wraparound segment that much. Well, actually, I like more of the idea of the wraparound segment, but it could have been done a little better. Sure. But no, I mean, those first four though, like really solid, and especially with an anthology movie, you always expect to have like a little duds, and I think unfortunately more often than not, I feel like maybe you kind of expect one, maybe two really good ones, and then a couple of okay stuff, and then maybe some bad ones. But no, I think 4 out of 5, that's a really good average.
Yeah, which I think leads us to rating the movie out of 10, Tim. If you want to hazard a number.
It is definitely a little tough because you almost want to rate everything a little individually, and I do feel honestly those first 4 movies they would probably all range from about a 7 to an 8, but man, the last one and the wraparound just really bring it down. I'm still going to be really charitable though. I'll give it a 7.5, but it's I don't even think you need to replace the last one. If you just got rid of it, it'd be a lot tighter. Everything else would be much better hit. And then, I could easily see that going up to 8, 8.5, but I'll stick with 7.5 though.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with the first 4 stories and all for different reasons, which is great. So I think I'm going to give it a straight 7. I think if the last story had either been gone or been good, I'd probably go as high as a whole point more, but I think taken as a whole, I have to kind of consider that and consider the wraparound segment, which just kind of felt mostly pointless. And not that a wraparound segment should feel important. I think the problem is they wanted it to feel important and it just didn't.
Sure.
Because if it had just been a host telling us about the stories, it'd be fine or whatever. But they tried to tell a little story with it, and I commend them for trying. Ultimately, it just didn't work.
Yeah, it just seems like I don't know, it's just needlessly kind of weird and confusing and uneven, especially like we were saying, the first couple of times he doesn't even show up, so you don't even have any idea that there is a projectionist. At least maybe have some type of hint of it, or maybe have someone at the the ticket counter that kind of lures the people in or something, just so you have someone that's kind of, I don't know, talking and maybe just introducing stuff. And it just seems like there could have been easier ways to do it, because I do genuinely like this idea for an anthology movie where it is people coming into this theater and watching these movies. It's a really good idea. I like it.
Yeah. There you go. That's Nightmare Cinema. Pretty solid outing overall though, so do check it out if you like horror anthologies, especially more pulpy ones, which I would definitely say this is. So that kind of wraps up the episode. So what we should tell you now is how you can help us out by liking and subscribing and supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month, and for that $1 you get a bonus exclusive episode of Screams After Midnight once per month, so you get that. At the $5 tier, of course, you get to vote on an episode once per month, and add movies to the crypt. So go over to Patreon, have a look and see if anything tickles your fancy. Obviously you also get benefits for other shows that we do on MailFuzz as well, so go and have a look see. Check out all the content that we do. If you like sci-fi movies, there's a sci-fi equivalent to this show called The Ace, the Atomic Cinema Experiment, which I do with Tara, so you can check out that too, and go have a look see. But otherwise, I think that's us, right? Is that everything? Okay, good, excellent. All right, Tim's so confident and sure of himself. That is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.